Hey, so task cluster 3 in Oak Terrace by Tony Connor. You so far have looked at title, you've looked at narrative, you've looked at the initial poet's attitudes to the subject matter, which is old age. You've also gone through, you've had a look for what 8 pieces would I like to discuss. You might have had a little think about the journey of those, although I myself haven't said too much about those in the other videos. So task cluster 3 on the pack. And if you're not attending my school where you have this pack available on Google Classroom, then you can get the pack from my test shop. But don't worry, don't buy it, it's free, but there is a link in the description as there is to the poem itself. So if you are wanting to do a bit of revision, a bit of home learning, building skills in unseen poetry outside of your own school, your own establishment, then fantastic. You've come to one of the right places. Other websites are available, of course. So task 3 you've underlined, and when we did task 2, as we were underlining, we actually did a lot of the work for task 3 in the workpack, because we were able at that time to name some of the ways that the writer was doing what they do. So they were choosing words in the simplest form, they were arranging those words on a page so that some of the words fell at the beginning of lines, important, some of the words fell at the end of lines, and beyond nouns and verbs, writers get into adjectives to fill out their ideas more and more. So there's, you don't have to get too complicated in discussing the ways that writers do things. So if you look at your task cluster 3, what it does basically is it says, look, in one of its simplest versions of analysis, this poem uses, and you'll see on the list, descriptive language, verbs, nouns, sensory language, which is any language that appeals to senses other than eyes, which would be imagery, so appealing to taste, appealing to sound, appealing to our sense of touch, for example. Emotive language, so what's designed to kind of really get us here, or really get us here, and get us, feeling those emotions. Lists, quotations, personification, alliteration, adjectives. So I know that all of those are in this poem, and then I think I've discussed a few more with you in the video before. So it's going to be fairly easy to match some of those up. I remember at the end of the last video, you were just prompted by me before you were looking independently to straight into stanza 4, melting to madness. And I was that's alliteration, isn't it? Okay, so you can already spot where that one is, and that might be some vocabulary that you can use. I hope you picked up on in stanza 4, silly prayers. So when I've marked this in the past from students that I've taught, they've definitely picked up on the fact that she says her prayers before bedtime. But what unfortunately many students didn't pick up on is there's an adjective that comes before that. And that must have some significance to the poet. Silly. It's an unusual way to describe prayers, isn't it? Okay, so you can see then that if you're looking carefully, the list that I've provided you with actually is very, very easy to match up with the quotations if you didn't always have a technique to mention with the quotations and phrases that you want to use for this piece of work. So they're there to support you. So if you are looking for tips beyond having a look at this poem in Oak Terrace, then you can always use the word as a subject term. It's one of the choices the poet has to make. It's the most fundamental choice they make, isn't it? Choosing which word to use to label what thing in the world to have an effect on you. So don't be afraid to, keep it quite functional if you would like to. Then you can break some of those words down. Our 4 main word classes: nouns, naming things in the world; verbs, actions or states that we might find ourselves in; adjectives, which then qualify your nouns, give them a little bit more colour; and adverbs, which again give your verbs a bit more colour. So those are some basics that you can use. Descriptive language: the writer chooses the description, the writer chooses the language, because literally that's what they're doing. So don't get yourself so tangled up. It is better if you can say what the poet is choosing and say why that choice is effective. And I know that the exam board would much rather you just engaged with the literature they put in front of you rather than worrying about, well, what is the label for that choice? Okay, so you don't have to litter the thing with lots of really convoluted, highfalutin subject terms. Sometimes it just doesn't help. Okay. So if you want to do some matching up, just so that you can very slickly in a sentence say the writer uses, and then just before the quotation, it's useful to say what technique is at work. Okay, so there they are for you. So one of the things that students very often forget, particularly on unseen poetry, is that poets want to create an effect within you. They want to change your state in some way. So they want to make you believe, or they want to help you to understand, or they want to help you feel. So we need some verbs. If we are going to get marks for assessment objective 2, which goes beyond your initial understanding of the phrases, then you need to start to focus on, for the effects on the reader or readers, then you really need some verbs. And if we're looking for ones that you can travel from poem to poem to poem to poem to poem with, which is what I'm always looking for, makes the reader feel, makes the reader understand, makes the reader believe, makes the reader think. And then you would go on to say what it makes you feel, think, understand, believe. Okay. So let's just try a few of those, because our last video was really about, well, this is why I think the poet's using this word, for example, nodding. But if we are clever with our phrasing, we can get some of what we understand to work for us, not only for assessment objective 1, where we critically judge and understand and evidence, but also to help us get marks for assessment objective 2, which is where we understand choices, effects and purposes of poets. Okay, so I'm just going to exemplify a few of these, and then I think, looking at the workpack, you are pretty ready to go on your language discussion. Okay. Oh, there's one, definitely one tip that I want to look at there. Right, so if we look at what we were underlining, just in terms of I'd like to discuss this, and I know that the writer's made a choice, and here's what I think I'm judging is going on in this poem. So, I know we look specifically at the quote marks. There's a quotation of the headline, growing stockpiles of warheads. And I talked about my understanding and my judgment of that at length in the last video. But if I want to say to the examiner that I understand the effects that might have on a reader, I put myself in that position. I am a reader. So from what I understand of it, I then say, well, what if I'm not so unique? I'm sorry, but we're not in terms of what we think about poems. What if I'm not so unique? What if I, as a reader, think what a lot of other readers would also think? So I can be the reader. I can say the effect on the reader is, And then I can think, well, what's the effect on me? Because I'm a reader. So I think through that process. So I think, right, okay, when I look at grown stockpiles of warheads, actually the effect is it starts to make me feel anxious. Because I know for a fine fact that the world has, in my opinion, way too many weapons of war. So I start to get anxious about that. And I think that's part of this poem. It isn't unreasonable, is it, to think actually that old woman is probably having a similar reaction to me. The effect is that I start to feel anxious about the world that she lives in, and it's the same world that I live in. So the effect on the reader of the poet choosing to include the headline "Growing Stockpiles of Warheads" is that the reader feels anxious about how the world has become weaponized. Okay, so you can hear the slight difference. It means that she's been told there are lots of weapons in the world. It does mean that, but that's assessment objective 1. It means this. Assessment objective 2 is, if it means that, what effect does it have on me? Okay, so the effect is that it increases my level of anxiety. I'll do one more for you. Okay, so what else is a nice one to have a look at? So, a child's death. I mean, this for me, I am a mother myself, and a child's death, discussion of a child's death, and a fellow mother having experienced the loss of a child really, really is emotive for me. And I know that you're heading up to doing your exams, so, one or two of you might have a child by now, but the majority of you won't have experienced parenthood. So you're going to have to empathise. The loss of any person that you love is going to help you empathise. So let's work on this idea of effect. So the effect of the emotive language, a child's death, is that the reader feels, and actually I feel sympathy for that woman. Okay? I don't feel devastated for her. The devastation belongs to her, but I feel sympathy because I can understand what that pain must be like. So I could say I sympathise with her devastation, I sympathise with her pain, or the reader sympathises with her devastation and with her pain. So that's how we tackle some of assessment objective 2. The other thing about assessment objective 2 that I want to draw your attention to, now you've got all of these lovely things to look at and explore and explain your understanding of to the examiner, you need to also focus on writer's purpose. So why has Tony Connor sat down and decided to write this poem? He's reacting to things that he sees in the world. He's clearly observed the plight of many, many old people, and that actually a core of those old people, particularly old women, because women tend to live longer than men. Sorry, boys. I don't know why that would be. But there tends then to be a glut of older women. And lots live alone within white Caucasian heritage families. I know that lots of heritagers live with their parents. The grandparents, the elders in the family, the elders in the tribe, if you like, which is fantastic. But unfortunately, in lots and lots of Caucasian heritage houses, our old people are shipped out to nursing homes. That infrastructure is not part of kind of our a daily culture. Okay, so we can bring our cultural experience here. I can't remember why I got onto that. Oh, the poet is exploring purpose. So maybe Tony Connor is sitting back, and over the years he's observed that, you know, in his white Caucasian heritage, that he sees lots of the community, the older women in the community, living alone and becoming quite isolated, and he wants to make an observation on that. He has an attitude to that. His purpose is to show us that maybe this is a cruel way to allow our older generations to live. Maybe he wants to expose to us the loneliness that that sort of lifestyle might bring. Okay? I hope that makes sense, because I know that I teach lots and lots of diverse student experiences. So it might be that you could judge it more kindly or judge it more harshly. What is his purpose? I think we might all agree, though, that he is not suggesting this is a fantastic way to live. I think we can all agree that he's suggesting this is a lonely, heartbreaking way for her to live, and that she has lost hope and lost her connection with the remainder of humanity, and what she sees of the remainder of humanity in the world she looks at is stockpiling warheads. So the poet's purpose is to maybe get us to say, whoa, hang on a moment. Let's take stock. Is this the best way for us to look after an older generation? Okay. So hopefully that solves for you how, when your teacher says, but you need to be saying how the writer did it, why they did it that way, with what purpose, then those little sentences will help you think about how you can deal with that. And it's different to what you understand of the poem. You have to put yourself in the writer's shoes and the reader's shoes in general. Okay, let me just double check that I've given you enough support for task 3. So you're matching up the subject terms, you're making some suggestions, and you're saying what the effect that has on you as a reader and why the poet might have wanted to do it that way. And then there's just a few suggestions about where to find them on the lines. Okay, so we're going to move on in the next video. The task 4 cluster is about the mood and atmosphere. So this is the stuff that if you can deal with this, you're going to be grading really well. You're going to be getting into those fabulous grades for those quick college courses with this. But I think that everybody can do these. It's just that sometimes people forget. So let's remember to do the mood and atmosphere. So I'll see you in the next video. Yeah, see you then.